Great. Great, thank you. So this is a learning bite, and a bite means a very small portion of the topic of the day. And today our focus is around strategy execution. My name is Gabriel Nyamu. I'm a director and a chief transformation officer with a company called InQuest Research and Consulting. I am also a strategy consultant and also a human resource HR, or what we call human capital transformation expert. So this is a topic that is very clear, very keen to us, as we have seen many organizations mostly struggle with realizing the outcome from strategy planning and strategy development. And we spend a lot of time developing strategic plans, but sometimes we still have what we call a strategy execution gap. And I don't know how your experience has been out there. I would love to hear maybe along the way. And that's the reason why we chose every year we shall be holding 2 annual conferences every year, where we have conversations around strategy implementation. It's one thing to come up with a plan or a strategy by that sense, but it's another, of course, to be able to realize impact from that. That's the reason why this forum is a build-up. We call it a pre-conference. We have a major conference upcoming end of this month, the last week of August. So this one is a build-up to that, so that you can be able to sensitize people. This is more of a sensitization forum to allow people to connect dots in terms of what strategy execution is all about. So because of time, you allow me to go straight into the conversation today, so that at least we can get the best out of this. And let me share my screen, and you can let me know once you see my screen on your end. Just a minute. Good, and feel free to put on the chat any comments that you may have in the course of this session. I'll be happy to engage on the same. Good, I hope you can see my full screen, the slideshow. Judy, confirm kindly.
Yes, I can see.
All right, thank you very much. So you allow me to move a bit. I'll be a bit very fast so that we can cover as much as possible. However, because it's been recorded, I will allow you an opportunity to access the recording after this, and you can be able to replay that in your own tempo all time. That's why this is not necessarily like a full training, it's more of a bite. A bite is just a small nugget that you dissect from a whole learning path. So the topic about 6 steps for impact-led strategy execution, and we are using something we call Palladium Xpp Barra Scorecard. I know we may have heard about the Barra Scorecard by Professor Kaplan and Norton, but there's evolution of that Barra Scorecard over a period of time, which now we have what we call the Palladium Xpp. Xpp means execution premium. People mistake that because people are used to the traditional Barra Scorecard, which is where you have the 4 perspectives, and it predominantly has been used mostly in what you call performance management and appraisals, which is actually an optimal use. It's not an optimal use for Barra Scorecard, literally. So it has evolved now not to become a performance management system, but more what you call strategy execution framework, where performance management is a very literal piece, actually. It's actually the last thing of the whole process. I'm going to walk you through this briefly, hopefully in 15 minutes or so. Then we can have a quick conversation, maybe allow the next steps. So, we'll talk about elements of organizational success quickly, very briefly, 3 minutes, strategy execution gap, Palladium Xpp itself, and then I'm going to talk about the upcoming execution masterclass that we have end of this month. I would highly encourage that you can be part of that. Actually, that is the real masterclass itself. It's coming up towards the end of this month. We're going to talk about it in a few. So let's quickly talk about something we call elements of organizational success. What are the major components that make an organization succeed? And I'll ask 2 questions first. I don't expect an answer for now, but I'd like you to reflect on that later. And the first question is, why do that organization exist? So that then we say it's succeeding in the right direction, because you can succeed in the wrong direction. You can grow, but you're growing in the long side or in the long vector, and therefore that's not still success. So how does an organization then have clarity on why they exist? We call this mostly the purpose. And there's a very dangerous question where you question, why do you exist and so what? And then you repeat that loop again. Why we exist, so what? Why we exist, so what? You realize by the time you're reaching the third iteration, it's kind of become blank. You actually discover probably you don't exist for this for the real reasons, literally, that probably you thought. And this can happen even to an individual level, not just in a corporate environment. But it's always good to have conversation, especially in the boardrooms, in the ExCo management committee, to question and clarify why we exist. And one way to even tell why I exist is to ask, which is the most important one metric? I ask this in many of my strategy workshops, in boardrooms, in ExCo team, in board members, and it's usually a very interesting conversation. So the first thing, of course, will always be, we want return on capital employed so that we can get dividends. If it's all, maybe you're in non-for-profit, the profit space. But you discover when you ask the second question, so you want to get profit, let's say 2 billion. So what? Then another one, why? And then so what? Another why, so what? You discover actually it's hot air. Actually, you get stuck somewhere. It's a very serious conversation around it. So organization exists, and we have what you call elements of organizational success. There's what we call, compelling business case, having a vision, culture and values, strategy, which is our conversation today, information, which is data, leadership, resources, capability, motivation, and communication. Those are elements of organizational success. Let's see if something missing in each one of them. If you don't have purpose and mission, which is the comparing business case of why you exist, what you have is you have almost zero impact. You can have a very big organizations, but zero impact. Just in motion, January to December, zero impact, because there's no clarity on the why, meaning the purpose and the vision. If there's no clarity on the vision, you get confusion. People don't know where they're heading to, because vision gives you the revelation into the future. If you lack culture and values, a strong proposition on the essence of things that you stand for and believe, there's corruption, like what we see in most of our sector in terms of corruption, both private and public. When you lack strategy, why we are having this conversation, the outcome is diffusion. You'll be distracted. Tomorrow you are told, we are doing this, we are implementing AI, you run there brightly. Tomorrow you hear, oh, big data is the thing, you rush there. Another day you hear, oh, we have ESG goals, climate action, you run there. But because you don't have strategy, you end up being diffused by anything that is contemporary. And that actually creates triviality in terms of impact. When there is no information, no data to rely on to know where you're heading to, uncertainty comes in. When there is no leadership, you lack direction, misdirection. When there is no resources, you get frustrated. I'm sure most of you may be in organizations where you are managing a department or a functions. If there's no resources, whether it's human capital or even resources such as technology and all that, you get frustrated. If there is no capability, that means competencies and what you require to deliver, exhaustion coming, working too hard, but not going anywhere. And of course, where there is no motivation, you get resentment. People are not motivated, they resent, they fall back. And if there's no communication, automatically there is fear and anxiety. Those are elements of success. Our focus mostly is on strategy. So I'll go straight to the strategy aspect in the next few minutes. In the strategy, the strategy execution itself is more how do we implement strategy. And our challenge for leaders is not just to come up with the right strategy. We have smart strategies in boardrooms, in gathering dust in the shelves. I usually say it's better even to have a poor strategy, but implemented smartly, than to have, a good strategy, a smart strategy implemented poorly. There's no result and no impact. So this is how do we keep promises to our shareholders or stakeholders when we come up with, we actually call them stakeholders, when we come up with strategy. Most organizations are struggling. Less than 10% of strategies get implemented. That's up par fortune. And this is quite very worrying. We spend so much time in retreats, in workshops, come up with a nice document called strategy plan. 10% of them only get implemented. The price of this can be established in terms of the linkage between strategy and performance can turbocharge your impact performance in terms of organizational performance by 50% to most organizations. That's why we have organizations that have what we call Strategy Execution Office or Office of Strategy Management. Now, in the majority of cases, 70% of real problem is not about bad strategy. It's more bad execution. And of course, 2/3 of companies had targets that exceeded 9% of real growth. Yet only one out of those companies achieve the level of profitable growth. This tells you there's a gap in execution space. It's quite a worrying trend. And many people are still stuck, and especially executive in this space. Now, we usually have 4 barriers. One barrier is that 95% of employees usually don't know what is happening. They don't have clarity of strategy. You can imagine you have only 5% of your organization understanding strategy. Then 70% do not link management, incentives to strategy, even how we reward managers. 85% of executives spend less than 1 hour every month talking about strategy. We are preoccupied by what we call operations, customer complaint systems that are not working, all those things. And then finally, 60% of organizations do not link strategy to budget. It is what we are calling strategy management vacuum. And it's again nothing to do with the bad management. It is everything to do with no management at all. We usually say strategy requires, you need a strategy and a state. State is like the posture and the situation to be able to win in the game. So the strategy, of course, is where you require clear value proposition, clear change agenda, agile execution, win-win synergy, design insights, and impact sustainability. But on the state is where you require culture, change of mindset, enablement in terms of capacity to deliver the results, and of course, clear paradigm shift, which is called change management and transformational shifts. So you require the strategy at the state to implement anything, whether it's an individual and also for organization. We know this blueprint, which is the purpose is why we exist. The mission is what do we do to fulfill why we exist. The vision is the level of ambition we want to acquire and to be. And of course, the values is the strong convictions, the beliefs, behaviors, and also the mindset. And then finally, we have the impact that is given through execution. So I want you to take note. You can have all these up things, which are good and they are DNA, but if you don't operationalize and actualize the strategy, the impact doesn't accrue. So the pathway for accruing impact is literally strategy execution, where you combine strategy and operations and execute your agenda. So in terms of the Palladium Xpp, which I'll do in the next 2 or 3 minutes, why does this then become an important bit? We call it execution premium, the benefit you accrue as a result of implementing strategy. So in this context, we all know vision and mission can be explained in form of forces. A mission is a push force. It's a push issue. Sorry, you can read kindly.
Officially, it went away. Officially,
kindly, I don't know whether Barbara, I think, yeah, so good. Now, so a mission is a push and a vision is a pull force. It pulls an organization towards. I don't have time to talk about it. We are going to unpack this during the masterclass. It's quite a heavy deep in terms of how we understand vision and mission. Let's talk about some steps in strategy execution. Then I'll go to the Palladium model. When you're doing strategy management process, you always go through the following steps. For those maybe who may not necessarily be focused on strategy space, these are the steps to go for. First of all, you clarify, then define purpose, mission, values, and vision. I think that is straightforward. But after that, you do strategy analysis where you come up with, those analyses we do like Pestel, SWOT, very traditional models. Currently, we are moving away from them currently because we are focusing more on understanding the need. In fact, we call it need exploration. Instead of strategy analysis, we look for need and opportunity scouting. Currently, that's what we are coordinating strategy space. Those issues of SWOT analysis, they are good, but they are not necessarily critical drivers when it comes to compelling strategy formulation. From there, we create something called a change agenda. You're moving from where to where, out of which we do formulation. Formulation gives us what we call objectives. This is a standard model generally, but there are gaps also in terms of how we learn this series. From there, there's something called strategy mapping. You come up strategy maps. I don't know whether some of us have seen strategy map. From the strategy maps, we create KPIs or measures and targets. The measures and targets, we establish targets and baseline. The difference between the target and the baseline of the KPI, we call that performance gap. From the performance gap, we identify model drivers. What drive the KPI? Out of it, we rate through some model we call cause effect model or root cause analysis to identify something we call strategic initiatives. I hope you see that paradigm there, that you don't come up with activities before you go through that process. You may notice, for those who are familiar with the process, that's actually one of the biggest gaps we have in the market, where we usually don't go through that process for identify performance gap, getting the model drivers, do cost-effective modeling, which you have to use data and then come up with initiatives. From the initiatives, you create, of course, initiatives portfolio, and you test hypothesis, something we are going to unpack during the workshop. And then from there, we do, of course, initiative planning to test whether the initiatives are giving you value. From there, you go to strategy funding, you come up with something you call Stratex. Stratex is the fundraising you make to the financing of the strategy. And then you do a benefit realization loop. You loop back to test whether the assumptions you had made in the performance gap are actually being actualized. Very few organizations do that loop. We call it benefit realization loop. Then finally, you do perform what you call strategy accountability. And from the strategy accountability is where we then come up with the performance management. Now, the upper part we call it strategy development. The lower part we call it strategy translation and alignment. And notice, performance management is the last-most thing that you do when you are now holding accountability to leadership and employees on the promise they made in the strategy translation. If I pause there, you just question yourself. You notice performance management is the last thing you think about, and strategy performance management here we define it as strategy accountability, learning, and monitoring evaluation. Nothing else. And it should come the last. Now, when you ask more people about a balance scorecard, they tell you it's a performance management appraisal system. We misuse the tool. And that's where this workshop comes in. It's a way of unpacking and kind of defining the mysteries of balance scorecard, and more so Palladium Xpp, which is the most refined version of BSE, not just the traditional one of enablers, process, internal business process, customer, and financial. It's a traditional one. We have actually been able to improve that over a period of years. For the last actually 7 years, we are now using what you call the XPP, which many leaders still don't understand it. Now, the XPP has several 6 steps, which is what I'm going to walk you through in the next 1 minute only. Then probably afterwards, we're going to unpack this during the program. We always start by developing the strategy, where you come up with the benchmark, best practice, you analyze the external environment and all that, and come up with something you call value gap. And then finally, of course, you do identification of change agenda. Change agenda is at the core of developing or formulating strategic objectives. From there, you translate strategy, where you translate strategy to strategy themes, what we call strategy maps, and then finally come up with the measures, institute portfolio. There's something we call Stratex. Stratex is a subset of the budget for financing strategy. We call it Stratex. Just as you have CapEx, capital expenditure, and you have operating expenditure, we call it OpEx. We have another dimension we call Stratex, which is developed from the strategy initiative funding. Then there's a governance model that we address, and then the Office of Strategy Management. From there, we do alignment. The organization is a going concern. We align the entire organization. We'll cascade to business unit, cascade to functions, to shared service, to the other part in terms of even risk management issues, audit, and all that. And then finally, we do capacity building. Then from there, we plan the operation. We identify process improvement, of course. We link budgets, of course, with the strategy. We do initiative portfolio management, and there's a framework we share, a very detailed framework, or something we call initiative management and governance framework. Then from there, of course, we do rolling forecast to be able to test the resource allocation over a period of time and the impact harvesting. Then finally, of course, we are able to consolidate and do the reporting, where we implement this to do with data strategies around the same. Then monitor and learn. This is where data comes in now. We monitor the operational view, do business information platform. We create something we call business intelligence. We still data governance and data management principles to test the implementation of the strategy. And of course, the quality control and audit process to control the whole process. Then finally, we test and adapt. We learn what you call business experiments, test hypotheses we made during the process of strategy formulation and translation. And of course, this helps you then to recalibrate in an agile way to change the strategy. Strategy is not something static. You dynamically keep refining it over a period of time. Those are the 6 stages of Palladium Xpp. They are quite deep. We usually take 5 full days to unpack this process, from how you initiate the strategy all the way to finalize it. So and all this, we always anchor it on data. And that's why this statement for this guy called Edwards, in God we trust, all others bring data. So when you're doing this process, we use a lot of data. It's a data-driven exercise. It's not something you do through gut feeling. I want to go to the rest of that. We're able to draw what we call strategy maps. These are going to be amplified during the workshop. These are samples of how strategy maps are formulated. You're going to go through all aspects of it. Then we are going to learn how you link strategy map to scorecard, actually link to the scorecard, and something called initiative portfolio. You complete, and you can have a strategy represented by what you call a corporate scorecard on one slide. What the slide I'm showing here is good enough for a whole organization. One page, one slide scorecard. That's what we do when you do strategy execution assignment. You can represent a whole organizational strategy in one slide. Use the strategy map and the scorecard. This aspect of having, 10-page of document showing, the appraisals and all that is actually mostly not effective. Then from there, of course, we show you how to do something called initiative mind mapping or canvas, planning canvas on how initiatives are done. This is just a sample of one. We may not have time to do that. From there, we go into what we call cascading and alignment, where you cascade from corporate all the way downstream to the personal, individual scorecard. We have three methods we use in the cascading process: identical, contributory, new. I'm not going to the final details because our time is up, but just to show you at least some of these things that will be covering during the masterclass, and then how we do development planning, best practices for this process. So best process, of course, to make sure that you link your performance management to strategy. You make sure you have KPI libraries that are pre-developed before that you help them to cascade, and then embed a continuous process in performance management. The emphasis is learning and improvement, and of course, establishment of the Office of Strategy Management. We're going to give you some terms of reference on how you institute that. Most of the time, the strategy management is left vacuum. Nobody is driving it. It's just a small committee of people from different CFO, COO, you combine them and you call them strategy management office. But that's long. It's a long misuse of it. Because a business process, it should have an owner. Then, of course, PM is an auditable process. And then there's a way we align also the board to have balance scorecard. The board balance scorecard as well, aligned to the whole strategy. Then agility at the core, even as we do this. We usually say, fail fast to learn fast in the strategy implementation process. We have this upcoming Palladium Balance Scorecard Masterclass happening between 26th and 30th of August. The focus is to help go deep dive. It's a very deep dive series that takes you through what you call impact-led strategy implementation and evidence-based performance management. And that helps you be able to unleash the potential for strategy implementation. The investment was 120,000. We have an early bird right now for 85,000 per delegate. Sponsor your teams, your CEOs, CFOs. We have directors, board members, senior management team. Anybody who is a manager, this is a must-have in the market. During this season is where many organizations are doing strategic plans. You don't want just to have a bright approach to the whole aspect of strategy process. And imagine that's the end of my bite, and we are done. I think we are going to share this recording that you can replay, share with your teams. And also we are going to share our contacts just to make sure at least you can be able to reach out to us in case you may need any more clarification. You may not have time for Q&A. I will allow this, maybe you can do it. We are going to do another bite next week. Kindly feel free to attend and also give us some of the responses in terms of the things we want us to cover in the next conversation. So thank you so much for attending, and God bless you. And we're looking forward to engage you more later in the near future. Thank you so much.